I didn't cry when David stepped up to the podium that night at the St. Catherine's Foundation Gala. Champagne glasses collided across the ballroom. The jazz band was tuning up. A waiter carried lobster bisque past me. The air smelled of tarragon. The polished oak floor reflected the chandeliers. David tightened his hand around the microphone. His knuckles turned white. Then he said it. "Tonight, I am proud to introduce the future of St. Catherine's Medical Center," he said, his gaze sweeping over the audience like a master showman. "Lauren Price, the new executive voice who will take this institution forward while I step back. And of course, my wife, Emma, the woman who counts sheets in our laundry, keeping us safe from infection even if you don't see her name in lights." A cough rippled from the crowd. Mouths stiffened. A few nurses exchanged puzzled looks. And the board members shifted in their seats like they'd just heard a joke with a sting. Lauren, standing silently beside David with a practiced smile, nodded as if this was all perfectly normal. I stood frozen near the edge of the room. Chain of custody and infection control drills running on repeat in my head. My fingers curling around the satin napkin in my palm so tightly it started to crease. David didn't stop for my reaction. Instead, he lifted his glass, his eyes gleaming with triumph, beneath the soft glow of chandeliers. "Here's to new leadership. And to Emma, who keeps the linens clean enough to save lives, though her work might not make headlines." The laughter that followed stung like acid. I smiled at Lauren across the room, her lips thin, eyes calculating. I wanted to say something, anything, but my voice was gone. That night, my job felt smaller than a folded surgical sheet, and yet I knew every stitch of those linens better than most knew their own hands. After the gala, I slipped out the side door away from the polished marble lobby, heading back to the hospital's medical laundry dock on Harrison Avenue. The scent changed immediately. Sharp detergent, sterilizing chemicals, the faint coppery tang of old blood, machines churned Fawn's World, and racks of clean linens hummed in stainless steel carts. Here was my real world. Unglamorous, vital, and ignored, I pulled off my jacket, the silk still stiff with the scent of perfume and fear from the gala, and got to work. That's when I saw it. A folded surgical sheet, oddly placed at the end of the sorting table, stained with something dark and sticky. My heart froze as I picked it up. The faint smell of iron filled my nostrils. It was tagged with a sewn-in metal label that read SCOR47719. The tag's dull finish caught the harsh fluorescent light, and a faded blue ink line ran across the fabric, a mark I hadn't seen since my early training days. The laundry logs marked this sheet as destroyed weeks ago, deleted from the records, shredded and incinerated. But here it was, folded neatly among freshly laundered linens, waiting in a heap. I took pictures of the tag and the blood stains. Then I sealed the sheet in an evidence bag for my locker. The plastic crackled beneath my fingers. That was standard infection control procedure. This time, it felt like a decision. Operating Room 4. That tag belonged to one of the hospital's high-risk surgical rooms. Every used sheet was supposed to be tracked and destroyed. The record said SCOR47719 had been destroyed on April 10th. The sheet was in my hands 3 weeks later. The records did not match the fabric. I felt a cold tightening in my chest. Not fear, but fierce clarity. David's public claims about the routine incident in OR4, paraded just hours earlier over crystal glasses and cameras, were a lie. If linens logged as destroyed were suddenly back in rotation, then something worse than a PR stunt was happening behind these sterile walls. I zipped the evidence bag, closed and locked it in my locker. Then I texted my closest contact, Dr. Maya Chen. An investigator with the Massachusetts Medical Oversight Board. I didn't want to face this alone. David had made me invisible to the grand ballroom tonight, but here, in the fluorescent-lit basement, I was an expert and I had a story waiting to be told. I took the blood-stained sheet from the evidence locker. The metal tag was still attached. SCOR47719. The faded blue line ran across the fabric like a bruise. The destruction record said the sheet should have been incinerated. Instead, it had been washed and returned to circulation. I checked the laundry ticket and the sterilization record. The dates and processing times were complete. Only the destruction step was missing. I glanced at my phone. David's number still flashed on the screen from this morning's call. Then there was the access record to OR4. My keycard swiped log. Date: March 12th. Time: 2:50 to 4 p.m. That time frame was the exact overlap with the laundry processing. The sheet was there when it was supposed to be gone. I filed all this evidence away with the cautious precision my medical textiles background demanded. This wasn't just a hospital slip-up. Someone did this on purpose. For 7 years, I'd worked at St. Catherine's Medical Center. 7 years of counting every thread in every surgical drape, of picking out defective fabric in the dark rooms where no one thanked me. I barely saw daylight on some days, just the blue, stained walls and the distant beeping of monitors. All of it invisible labor. The kind that keeps a trauma center running but doesn't earn you a spot on the honor roll. I'd kept faith in this place because David, my husband and deputy administrator, told me to trust the system, that he was making things better from the inside. But trust was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. I'd suspected something was wrong more than once. I'd found irregular supply orders, missing inventory, and unexplained holes in the records. Each time, David had brushed me off with tired smiles and accusations that I was overthinking it. This morning's voicemail was no exception. Emma, you're being obsessive. Stop digging where you don't belong. This could cost you your job. His voice was cold. My husband, threatening me, like I was the enemy. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. A message from Lauren Price, the director of donor relations and David's alleged affair partner. A message like a dagger wrapped in silk. Keep watching, Emma. You're starting to look like a stalker. Her smug tone was unmistakable, and the timing was cruelly precise. I silenced the phone and took a breath. This fight was bigger than David and Lauren. It was bigger than me. I knew I had to get real help. Someone who understood how institutions protected their own and buried secrets. I picked up the phone and called the hospital's patient safety advocate, Lisa Monroe. Lisa's voice was calm but urgent on the line. Emma, whatever you have, hold on to it. We have to report this through the proper channels. But you're right to be careful. These kinds of cover-ups don't happen by accident. Later that afternoon, armed with the metal tag, the laundry weight ticket, the sterilization barcode, and the access record, I met with Mark Jenkins, the employment attorney the hospital had quietly approved for staff complaints. Mark didn't sugarcoat the risks. David is powerful. Lauren's ties to the board will make this hostile. But you have raw evidence here. If you stick to the documents and timelines, you can expose what they're trying to hide without it looking like personal vendetta. He slid the printed logs across the table. All the timestamps lined up. The destruction, supposed to be complete by 2 p.m. on March 12th, overlapped the moment when the bloodied sheet was clearly scanned at laundry and sterilization. But the most chilling fact hid in the hospital's security footage I'd somehow obtained through a friend in IT. There was a private meeting between David and Lauren in the admin conference room at exactly 2:10 p.m. That room was adjacent to OR4. For 50 minutes, they were alone, just before the laundering process started. David and Lauren had orchestrated whatever happened to that sheet. The very fabric that should have disappeared. Evidence in a case that could ruin careers and cost lives. Alive again, right under their noses. The hospital trust I had clung to for almost a decade felt like a lie I'd been sewing together thread by thread, only to have it ripped apart in front of me. And now the fight would begin, not with a shout, but with a meticulously gathered set of papers and timestamps. This was just the start. I stood outside the sterile room on OR4, muffled voices pressed through the glass. Surgeons argued in low tones. David wanted me to sign a linen incident report blaming me for the patient complication. Simply paperwork, Emma, he had said. Protect the hospital's reputation. I saved the request. The blank report felt heavy in my hand. I work in the medical textiles department at St. Catherine's Hospital in Boston. We make sure every surgical gown sheet and drape is cleaned and sterilized to hospital standards. That's why I was there the morning the patient's complication happened in OR4. The same day David was running point on a donor-funded expansion project and angling for a COO promotion. I'd never doubted his ambition before, but something about how quick he was to pressure me into signing triggered my gut. After refusing to sign, I returned to the one piece of evidence that still had a physical body, SC OR4 771 9. The laundry ticket, sterilization record, and OR4 access log were supposed to tell one clean story. They did not. Together, they showed that the sheet had been processed, marked for destruction, and then returned to circulation without a lawful explanation. David's public statement that afternoon claimed the patient's complication was unavoidable. A rare but known reaction, despite our protocols. But the monitor access record told a very different story. The heart rate monitor for that patient had several unexplained gaps, meaning nobody on the OR team noticed critical alerts while the patient's blood pressure plummeted. Even more alarming, the nursing handoff sheet I managed to get a copy of mentioned Metastation Administration, with vial lot number 5B324, X4. That batch had been flagged a week earlier by the Massachusetts Medical Regulatory Office for recall, but somehow it still made it to this surgery. Dr. Trigg Essexide, Maya Chen, a grizzled but meticulous medical regulatory investigator from the state, had been assigned to St. Catherine's after the incident. I first met her when I handed over a printed copy of those logs and reports. Her eyes narrowed as she read through each document, cross-referencing with the recall notices she'd brought. "This isn't an unavoidable event," she said quietly. "Someone bypassed protocol to push this medication and ignored monitoring data. There's much more here than a linen mishap. Lauren Price, David's mistress, didn't care about any of that. She stormed into the department the next day, loudly calling me just a laundry worker, slamming every effort I made to question her boyfriend's role. David's allies on the hospital board had already started singling me out. Trying to discredit me in private meetings. But what Maya uncovered was even worse. Hidden deep in the boardroom's risk management files that were never disclosed to the state, was a memo dated 6 weeks before the surgery. The risk memo spelled out how pushing through the new OR expansion ahead of full safety audits meant compromising monitoring system redundancies. The board not only knew the risks, they chose to ignore them for the sake of the donor funds and David's promotion track. That memo was never shared with hospital staff, regulators, or patients. "It's proof," Maya said after scanning the confidential file again. "They made a calculated decision to prioritize profits over safety, and they covered their tracks with falsified linen incident reports to deflect responsibility." I saved everything. The sheet number, the barcode scans, the nursing notes with the medication lot number still visible in faint print, the monitor logs with time gaps, the board risk memo with its damning signatures, and the email exchanges where David insisted I sign the false report. The hardest part was not the medical mistake. It was the expectation that I would help bury it. David did not ask me to lie. He assumed I would. Lauren's sneering remarks echoed in the hallway as I walked past the staff lounge. She's a laundry girl. What's she gonna know? I looked down at my badge. Supervisor of medical textiles. Guardian of sterile linens that could literally mean life or death. She had no idea I'd already passed everything to Maya and that investigators were gearing up. Later, in the quiet of my apartment, I looked at the tag sheet to its evidence bag. It was not just fabric anymore. It was the witness they tried to silence. That tag stayed. So did I. David had thought silence meant weakness. He was about to find out what happens when the truth gets louder. I wasn't expecting David to corner me at the linen dock. It was the one place in the hospital that felt like my domain. The rows of beige shelves full of pristine scrubs and surgical wraps, stacked higher than I could reach. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the smell of disinfectant hung in the air, sharp and sterile. It was 3:07 p.m. Born, a Tuesday, 10 minutes after the shift change. I just copied out a key part of the SCOA R47719 sterilization sheet onto a hospital-approved encrypted drive. The wait ticket by the dock confirmed a suspiciously low load for the sterilizers that day, something I'd flagged earlier. This wasn't about petty office drama. This was about the risk my team and patients were exposed to because of David's reckless decisions. But then, there he was, David Reed. David Reed, my husband of 7 years and the hospital's COO, dressed in his usual tailored navy suit and looking every bit the man who owned this place and expected obedience. "Emma," he said, voice low but tight, like a steel cable stretched too far. What are you doing here? Copying files again? You really don't know when to quit, do you?" I didn't answer. I placed the copied records beside the evidence bag. I did not need to carry every number in my head. The sheet already connected them. He stepped closer. Too close. "Look, I can make you a deal. Just forget what you're poking around. I'm talking promotion. The new operations manager role goes to you. And the house, whatever you want, consider it a severance gift." His lips curled. "You think those medical textiles classes you took at community college make you an expert? You're out of your depth." His laugh was bitter, dismissive. "I can have you fired on grounds of insubordination and data theft before you finish your next shift." I met his eyes without flinching. I did not cry. I did not argue. I saved the conversation on the hospital's internal secured system. Following proper procedure, recording timestamp, automatic chain of custody tagging. I knew HR used those logs to investigate all major disputes. "David." My voice was steady. "I'm not scared of you or your threats. I have copies of everything. Every wait ticket that doesn't match the sterilization logs. The medication vial lot numbers that show expired drugs going into surgery, and the monitor records proving dangerous conditions. I'm taking this straight to Dr. Chen. That state investigator you love to hate. This isn't about your office politics. This isn't about your office politics. It's about patient safety." His face screwed up for a moment, anger flashing through the cracks of his careful control. Then, footsteps behind us. Lauren appeared, gliding down the corridor towards us. Lauren Price, the Hospital Foundation director, David's secret affair partner. She wore an expensive platinum watch that caught the harsh light flashing like a warning beacon. When she stopped beside us, she didn't seem surprised to see David or me, more like she was waiting for her cue. She lifted her phone. "David," she said. She told her phone. "David," she said. So well, as if this was a business meeting and not an ambush in the linen dock. That $72.500 transfer from the Foundation's emergency fund landed this morning. The one for purchasing that special project equipment at the East Wing? David nodded sharply. Yes, the details stay between the board and us. Lauren smiled, flashing that too-wide smile. Of course. Just making sure the paperwork is all filed before the board review. The signed authorization you gave was flawless, as always. I felt my throat tighten. That was new. Explicit talk of the Foundation's emergency fund. Money diverted, off the books, possibly untraceable to the standard hospital channels. And David signing off, or at least forging signatures on Foundation transfers. The hospital was supposed to keep those separate. I stepped back, pulled out my phone, and initiated the hospital's secured recording device again, knowing the snippet would be vital evidence. This was the kind of detail auditing committees live for. "Lauren," I said calmly, "could you show me that Foundation transfer record? The one authorizing this $72,500? Lauren's eyes flickered, and David's jaw tightened. Lauren's composure didn't break, but it was clear she didn't want anyone looking at that file, especially not me. "I'm not authorized to share financial records with you," she said, voice smooth but cool. Well, the hospital board is scheduling an emergency review after the recent risk memo they received," I said. "I'm sure they'd want to see all the paperwork, especially any authorization linked to secret funds or special projects that bypass normal safety protocols." David scoffed. "They'll get nothing but lies from you. Emma, you think copying some sheets and clips makes you credible?" For the record, the forged David sign-off on the Foundation transfer I have is dated last Wednesday, 2:15 p.m., I said, exactly when the destruction log mysteriously went missing from the archive. Lauren's hand tightened around her phone. "This is harassment. I'm calling security." And just like that, the linen dock's hum grew louder. 2 hospital security guards entered the hallway, their radios buzzing. I stepped aside but kept recording under hospital protocol. David glared daggers at me, but now there were witnesses. "This conversation will be part of the review," I said quietly, already making plans to send the entire recording package to Dr. Maya Chen. I wasn't about to let the threat of losing my job scare me into silence. Not after all this. David lowered his voice so only Lauren and I could hear. "You've made a huge mistake, Emma. The board will never tolerate this. You'll be painted as a troublemaker using patient safety as a cover for personal revenge." Lauren nodded, watching me with a calculating smile. "You don't have the credentials, Emma? You're just the hospital textiles supervisor, turned whistleblower. That's a dangerous label. Nobody wins when a little nobody thinks she can topple powerful men with paperwork." David glanced down the corridor, then barked to the guards. "Escort her back to the office. I'll have HR review her conduct first thing tomorrow." I kept my hands raised, slow and deliberate. "Fine. But the evidence is copied and secured. Every step logged by the hospital's own systems." The guards hesitated, not used to dealing with employees who knew internal rules so precisely. David's smirk faltered, but only for a moment. Lauren caught his eye. "You need to prep your statement for the board and the public. This isn't going to blow over." David nodded once and turned away, walking briskly down the corridor toward the hospital's executive boardroom. I stayed rooted to the spot. My heart racing, but my mind sharp. I knew the next few days were going to get worse before they got better. There would be hearings, threats, probably an attempt to discredit me professionally, maybe even legal action. But every lie left a trace. The hospital camera, the patient safety record, the foundation transfer with David's forged signature, the tagged sheet tied them together. And I knew one thing for sure. The hospital board was already scheduling an emergency review. Nothing David tried from that point on would be quiet or private. As I watched the boardroom doors swing closed behind him, I whispered to myself, "You thought silence meant weakness. You were wrong." I didn't panic. I placed the access record beside the medication form. The nurse's signature was time-stamped. Beneath it sat David's faint, unauthorized sign-off. The rest of the technical records only confirmed what the paper already showed. The day after the board emergency review was announced, the hospital hallways buzzed with tension, whispers shadowed by uncertainty. At the same time, I could hear David's voice drifting through the glass walls where meetings were held, speaking with his usual smooth confidence. I didn't want to listen, but the words slipped in, anyway, sharp and loud. "He's telling the staff I'm unstable." I told Dr. Maya Chen quietly during a conference call. Maya's calm voice didn't waver. "And that I'm jealous. That I accessed medical records illegally to sabotage him." She sighed. "Common tactic. Gaslighting in character. Assassination. We'll fight it with facts." I nodded. Facts had been my only weapon. David had not only denied the forged sign-off, but targeted my reputation directly to every hospital employee and donor. In an emergency email sent hospital-wide, he accused me of breaching patient confidentiality, threatening to leak sensitive information, and warned that if any staff aided me, there'd be consequences. I saved every memo, even those marked urgent and confidential. Nothing would be left to chance. Lauren Price's public statements caught me off guard only for a moment. She gave an interview to the local paper. "Emma's trying to destroy us. She's obsessed with this vendetta. David's the one keeping the hospital running and protecting families. This is all lies." Her words spilled out, practiced yet brittle. I could almost hear the rehearsed pauses. But I didn't engage, I did not argue or try to convince anyone with emotion. Instead, I leaned on hard evidence, and I called Maya. Before the board meeting, she had pulled the hospital's security footage for OR4, a restricted area under camera surveillance. "What we found is crucial," Maya explained, screen sharing the video. The camera angle showed a time-stamped record. A person entering with David's badge, leaving next to the time the medication sheet was supposedly approved. But the twist came in the access logs we pulled from the hospital's Department of Information Systems. They revealed that around that time, the system showed no official sign-off from David, only a digital copy, likely forged after the fact. I also obtained the official medication chain of custody form. Maya said, clicking through, "See the signature here? Nurse Kelly signed in twice. David's name is on the bottom, but the signature doesn't match the hospital's registered signature file." We ran it through forgery analysis. My stomach sank, then settled. It wasn't just circumstantial anymore. It was paper pixels and recorded moments caught in time. The board meeting arrived. It was scheduled for the late afternoon. In a glass-encased room overlooking the city skyline, something used for high-stakes decisions and donor events. Chairs filled quickly with hospital board members, senior staff, and a handful of donors who looked uneasy. The tension had peeled every polite veneer away. David sat across from me, calm and in control. Or so he thought. When the hospital's chief legal counsel swiped an iPad and connected it to the huge screen, The room quieted. Everyone's eyes locked on the first document, the RA4 access logs. My client, Mr. David Reed, has provided a full account. The counsel began. Mr. Reed states categorically that no medication sheet from OR4 survived. None exists beyond the nurse's original documentation. Further, he denies ever altering or backdating records, and any implication otherwise is baseless. David's own voice came next. David's own voice came next. Recorded in a closed session board interview we'd obtained. It sent a shiver through the room. "Let me be crystal clear," David said, eyes level in the video. "No sheet tied to OR4 was edited or changed by me in any capacity. If you ask anyone, they will confirm no physical or electronic record exists beyond the original. Any suggestion contrary to that is misinformation." The board members shifted. My heart beat faster knowing exactly what they hadn't heard, because the forged signature in the security footage told a different story. Dr. Maya stood, calm but firm, drawing the board's attention. "We have obtained 3 key pieces of evidence," she said. "First, the hospital's OR4 surveillance footage shows badge access logs that indicate unauthorized entry around the time the medication sheet was forged. Second, the medication chain of custody form bears a signature analyzed and confirmed as forged, attributed to Mr. Reed. Third, the hospital's information systems verified all digital signatures and timestamp records with no legitimate sign-off from Mr. Reed on the contested document. One trustee, an older woman with sharp eyes, glared at David before turning to the legal counsel. "How do you explain the forged signature on an official hospital form? That's a serious accusation." The room went silent. David's face deepened the usual calm into something tight. His counsel stammered. "We maintain the records were mishandled or lost due to a hospital clerical error, not client misconduct." The chair of the board, Richard Price, shifted in his seat. Clearly unsettled, he cleared his throat and repeated, "Mr. Reed personally denies altering any records or forging any signatures, as recorded and submitted." The chair's words sounded formal, but strangely incomplete, next to Maya's irrefutable evidence. I glanced at my phone and saw the message Maya just sent. "Massachusetts Department of Public Health has formally accepted the evidence we submitted." The final blow came when the board was formally notified that the department had scheduled a public hearing to review the case, a live-streamed event, no less, meaning our fight was moving beyond whispered meetings and clipped emails. They wanted transparency. So did I. As I sat back, David's smirk vanished for a brief moment, replaced by something that looked like uncertainty. For the first time, that looked like uncertainty. He wasn't the one controlling the narrative. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the city below. Maya leaned toward me and whispered, "This hearing is a game changer. You've done everything right." I didn't say much. I knew better than to claim victory yet. But deep down I felt something shift. Proof in hand, truth no longer hidden. The only thing left was waiting for them to face it. And when they did, I would be ready. I was sitting at my desk in the linen room, the only place in St. Catherine's Medical Center I could lock down completely. The humming of the HVAC system was the closest thing to calm I'd found all day. The yellow tag, SCOR47719, was resting on the metal surface beside my laptop, just under the harsh strip of fluorescent light. It was a flimsy scrap of polyester, yet it held more truth than anything David had ever said aloud. I ran my fingers over the tag's barcode, memorizing the numbers again. Tomorrow was the day, the hearing, the chance to finally pull everything into the light and shut down David's lies once and for all. The Department of Public Health had accepted our evidence, and Dr. Maya Chen was convinced enough to schedule the live stream. Public, official, irreversible. The thought settled on me like a cold resolve. But I was far from done fighting. Not yet. That's when I heard the soft click of the door entering a locked room. David, he never had a key to this linen office. Not since the morning I changed the code. No matter. He somehow opened the door and stepped inside, his footsteps slow but certain. My heart caught, but my face stayed blank. "Emma," he said with a smirk, voice low and dripping with that old poison. "Really? A medical textiles supervisor? Counting sheets now? Maybe it's time to get a life outside your little fabric farm." He crouched, eyeing the surgical sheet tag like it was some kind of insult. "SCO, R47719. He spat it out like a curse. "I'm just doing my job," I said quietly, barely letting my voice waver. He leaned closer and smiled, the kind of smile a snake would wear before striking. "You want to throw away our marriage, our house, your comfortable life on a gamble." His eyes flashed with something darker when he added, "I'm offering you a final bargain. You walk away. No more accusations, no hearing, no DPH humiliating me on a live stream." I looked up steady, ignoring the flicker of panic beneath his polished surface. "The house is yours," he said slowly. "Plenty of money in the bank, and I'll even get you that promotion you want so badly. Supervisor? How about director level? Just zip your lips." I swallowed the surge of disgust. "You think that matters anymore? That I'd bargain with a man who publicly called me unstable?" He chuckled like tasting poison and wanting more. "Oh, Emma, you're stubborn. But what I don't get is why you're still so obsessed with a goddamn piece of fabric." I met his gaze. "Because it existed. Because you said it didn't." My voice was low but fierce. "And because the destruction log places you inside the OR precisely when that sheet should have been shredded." His eyes narrowed, lips twitching into a sneer that faltered. "You're imagining," he said, but the tremor in his hand as he pointed was too quick, a giveaway. "Let's be exact now," I said, unfazed. Unfazed. "I know you met Lauren Price on June 14th, 2023. That's between 2:03 and 2:15 p.m. He froze, breath hitching. "What are you?" "I checked the hospital keycard logs and security footage," I said, stepping forward to pull out my phone. "You met her right in the staff lounge during the window when that sheet should have been destroyed. Right under your nose." David's jaw clenched. "Nice try." I pressed a few buttons. The security feed from June 14th appeared on the screen. David and Lauren stood outside OR4, alone. His hand shot to the evidence, bag beside me. His eyes wild. He grabbed for it suddenly. His eyes wild. He grabbed for it suddenly, as if snatching the truth might erase it. I stayed calm. "Don't touch that." Before he could argue, the door buzzed. My heart pounded in sync with the locking mechanism releasing. Dr. Maya Chen and two St. Catherine's security officers stepped in, their presence filling the tiny room. David's expression shifted from anger to panic, his face draining of color. His fingers still curled around the fabric evidence bag like a lifeline. Dr. Chen's voice was steady. "Mr. Reed, I'm here to collect this evidence for safekeeping and to witness your behavior during this final attempt at obstruction." David swallowed hard, eyes darting between the empty faces around him. Then my phone chimed, a message flashing from Lauren. I hesitated, then unlocked it in front of them. The text read, "Make sure the OR4 sheets are destroyed before the inspection next week. No loose ends." Sent June 12th, 2 days before the surgical sheet was supposedly shredded. Lauren Price, donor relations director, and his affair partner, had known about the sheet's existence and its scheduled destruction in advance. The room grew heavier. David's hand twitched, but he said nothing. I clipped the tag, SCOR4 7719, back onto the evidence bag carefully, then pulled it close. I heard Dr. Chen nod in approval, the security officers exchanging looks. This wasn't over yet, but for the first time since the lies began, I could see the shift. I closed my laptop. I packed the hearing packet and the supporting records. Then, I placed the tagged sheet on top. The fabric was flimsy. The truth was not. Tomorrow, this room of facts and truth would be the battlefield. Tonight, I let the silence grow. Because tomorrow, the world would listen. The live stream was already running when the Massachusetts Department of Public Health hearing began. Staff watched from hospital offices. Donors watched from their homes. The hearing room smelled of coffee and dry wood. David sat 2 seats away from me. His jaw was tight. Lauren kept shifting in her chair. Richard Price sat at the far end of the table with his fingers steepled. The hearing officer introduced the case, and then it was David's turn. The camera zoomed, all eyes on him. I want to be clear, David began, voice firm but eyes flickering. The OR4 event was unavoidable. No sterile linen survived that night. The destruction was complete. Any suggestion that I had a hand in tampering or retaliation against my wife is a false narrative pushed by someone hurt and jealous. He looked directly at me for the first time, lips curling in a faint sneer. Emma Reed is retaliating for personal reasons. The room stiffened. The donors muttered. Some viewers grimaced. I barely blinked. David had just committed to an outright lie on live camera. That was my moment. I met the hearing officer's eyes. With your permission, I want to present evidence that proves otherwise, I said, voice steady, surprisingly calm despite the thousands watching. Starting with SCO R47719. I motioned to the assistant. She brought forward the hearing folder. I opened it to the record that matched SCOR 4771 91143 PM.ON 43pm.org 19th 2023. That record identifies the OR4 linen batch, I said. The processing history was verified by Dr. Chen. The sheet was tracked into the room. It was never lawfully destroyed. Dr. Maya Chen, the state investigator, leaned forward and nodded. We conducted a full audit from linen check-in through sterilization, storage, and use. She said, all controls were documented and accounted for until this event. The SEO R47719 sheet corresponds precisely to the sterilization batch involved. David's face twitched. I caught his throat moving as he swallowed hard. His hand twitched too, and he tried to cough, but his mouth was dry, chapped. I didn't flinch. The laundry ticket confirms what left sterilization, I said. The weight does not match the destruction entry. David's hand began shaking visibly. He gripped his water glass, knocking it slightly. The microphone picked up a sharp clink. Lauren's eyes darted to the documents. I held up the destruction log. This entry says the sheet was destroyed around midnight. The OR camera shows something else at 11:58 p.m. Everyone's gaze shifted to the screen, which switched to show an image of the scrub nurse carrying linens out. But the barcode labels on those linens didn't match SCOR 47719. The sheets visible appeared to come from an entirely different batch, verified by the barcode scan recorded on the screen. David's face pale, sweat purling along his temples. His hands fumbled as he tried to grip the table edge. the pen snapping in two pieces. "Let's talk about the forged sign-off," I pressed on. I laid out the nursing handoff report with David's alleged signature clearly forged at the bottom. The handwriting expert's report, submitted to the board, confirmed the forgery, dated July 20th. David leaned back slowly, sweeping his hand across his forehead as if searching for oxygen. His tie loosened, microphone sputtering with every shaky breath. The chair scratched loudly as he shifted, hand trembling uncontrollably. Lauren, trying desperately to contain the unraveling, blurted out, voice cracking. David, he was under a lot of stress. He was trying to manage the company foundation transfer at that exact time. The room froze. My heart jumped. That was the exact transfer I'd uncovered in the financial audit. The one Lauren had tried to keep secret, timing it perfectly during the affair timeline to shield him. Richard Price's face, live on screen, turned from stoic to ice-cold fury. Lauren stumbled on her words. I was there. We were. David's head snapped toward her, panic ignited. "Don't," he whispered hoarsely. But the damage was done. Dr. Chin chimed in. "The foundation transfer aligns precisely with the dates of material mishandling. Additionally, the OR camera logs, sterilization barcodes, and medication vial lot control show inconsistencies in David's narrative." David's dry mouth moved, but no sound emerged. The chair shifted harshly again. His fingers spazzed over the table, knocking pens and papers. The hearing officer raised a hand, signaling a break. "I'm compelled," she said, "given this evidence and the board chair's observations, to announce an emergency suspension of Mr. Pension of Mr. No Chair's Reed's operational control over the medical textiles department. This includes immediate referral to the Massachusetts State Ethics Commission and law enforcement for further investigation." The room crackled with whispered conversation. Richard Price spoke, voice measured but cutting. "Our fiduciary duty is to the hospital and to public trust. The level of breach here is fundamental. We will proceed with the full board review and cooperate fully with DPH sanctions." I looked across the table at David, his skin clammy, eyes glassy, chin quivering. He was utterly exposed. The spoiled veneer of control shattered like glass. But the calmest moment of the day was still mine. I held the sterilization sheet again. Voice clear and deliberate. "SCO R47719. The sheet stamped at 11:43 p.m. The last time linens were properly accounted for. Everything after that is fraud." The room quieted further, the hundreds watching on the live stream frozen in their seats. That timestamp is not just a number. It is the minute David chose concealment over safety. The sheet kept the truth when everyone else tried to wash it away. The hearing officer called the session to recess. Cameras faded out, but the weight of what had happened would hang in Boston hospitals, and in my life, for years to come. The moment Dr. Maya Chen closed the hearing, the weight finally settled. Not the relief I thought it would be, but a quiet vigilance. I sat still as the room emptied, the echoes of discussions buzzing in my ears. The state investigators had shredded every alibi David and Lauren tried to spin, backed up by sheet S, COR 47719, and everything else. The destruction log, the OR4 access records, even the minute details in the nursing handoff notes. The medication's vial lot numbers matched the missing doses listed in the inventory discrepancy flagged weeks ago. The board's own risk memo, which Richard had tried to bury, was now part of the public docket. I didn't celebrate. I just waited. Outside the hearing room, the patient's family was gathered in a small conference area, their faces pale but now unmasked with understanding. Their attorney was handing them a packet, one I'd spent nights reviewing to make sure every timestamp and signature matched. The corrected timeline that mapped every handoff, every train. Every procedural anomaly brought clarity to months of questions. You were right, the mother whispered, her voice quivering. We've been asking for this for too long. I nodded, though at first my throat caught. I wanted to say more, but I let the lawyer finish explaining how this timeline would be used to pursue further accountability, how it meant they weren't just victims anymore, but witnesses backed by rock-solid proof. Back in the nurses' station, the atmosphere was heavy. I walked in slowly, seeing more than a few nurses wringing their hands, some with eyes fixed on the news coverage playing quietly on a screen. One younger nurse met my gaze and half smiled, like she'd been waiting for something to tip in our favor. Others still looked defensive. Whispering about how things had spiraled uncontrollably. I didn't interrupt. What needed to happen now was acknowledgement, not accusations. The head nurse pulled me aside. Emma, this changes everything. People want to blame, but I'm hoping this starts a new conversation about how sloppy policies hurt patients. How do we fix it? I pulled out the copy of the destruction log again, the red ink somehow sharper now that it was validated. The fix starts with transparency. The fix starts with transparency. And a system we all trust, I said. We need to rebuild trust in every link of the chain, from ore to laundry, from pharmacy to bedside. By mid-morning, the board was convening quietly. The pressure was mounting. Richard Price, the 50 today, who had fought tooth and nail to discredit the report, suddenly announced his recusal as board chair, an inevitable move given his conflict of interest and the damning memo that had exposed his attempts to cover up. I heard from a source inside the boardroom that his statement was curt, almost resigned. He handed the reins over to the vice chair with no fanfare. Upstairs in security. I watched as David's security badge, the one that let him access every restricted area, was sliced in half before witnesses. Symbolic and irreversible. I wanted to be angry, but the scene felt surreal. The badge, once his key to control, now lay shredded on the desk. It made real what I had suspected for months. This was no longer just about one mistake. It was about accountability on every level. Later that afternoon, my phone vibrated with a new voicemail. It was David. His voice was raw, pleading. Emma, please. You don't understand what this means. If you pull that sheet, this whole case falls apart. You don't want your name dragged through the mud over some clerical error. We can fix this. Just take it back. Remember, SCO R47 719. You don't want to do this. I listened in silence once, then pressed delete. I didn't respond with anger or explanation. Instead, I called back the same day and left a message. SCO R477 19 is already part of the chain. Not going anywhere. That was it. The next morning, back in the hospital's linen laundry room, I gathered the textile team and the cleaning staff. The ones who'd been sidelined, in months of finger-pointing, but who actually handled critical medical supplies every day. I was no longer just the supervisor with the report. I had to turn all that evidence into change. I laid out the new chain of custody protocols, detailed and unambiguous. Each sheet, each package of linens, each medication vial now moving with digital tracking, mandatory sign-offs and tamper-proof seals. No more gray areas to exploit. The tags, barcodes, and electronic logs would make deliberate destruction or misplacement impossible. I even brought laminated copies of the destruction log and OR access records as examples of what went wrong and why we could never repeat it. You're not just doing laundry anymore, I told the team. You're patient safety officers in your own right. Every sheet you handle is a piece of evidence that can save a life. Some nodded slowly, the weight of it sinking in. Others cracked jokes to break the tension, but the mood was steady. Hopeful, the hospital administration was quietly supporting the rollout. 2. The nursing supervisors were invited to workshops on the new protocols, the pharmacy updated their inventory controls, and the board agreed to commission regular audits to maintain the new standards. By the time I left that day, I glanced at the reconfigured OR supply room from a distance. The new racks gleamed. Tags were neatly aligned like soldiers ready for inspection. It wasn't just a hospital anymore. It was a system learning from the worst, so it could be better. 6 months passed with painstaking progress. David remained suspended, with several internal investigations pending criminal referral. Richard Price had retired quietly, his name scrubbed from committee rosters. Lauren remained off the foundation's board, her reputation quietly dissolving. The patient's family was arranging a settlement, a small justice in a sea of what-ifs. For me, the real victory was different. That afternoon, in the laundry room, became a turning point, a tangible step forward from pain and betrayal to safety and trust. From a shredded badge and a ruined sheet to a locked chain of custody that no one could break. I didn't win by destroying them. I won by building something they couldn't take away. Helping is a choice, not a debt. And today, safe hands carry more power than any stolen key. David's door locked behind him with a sharp click just before noon. The guard holding his revoked COO badge in a sealed envelope. I watched from the lobby, steady and silent. For months, I'd been swallowed by this storm he brewed, an affair behind my back. Fawford's medical reports that imperiled patient safety, and unauthorized foundation transfers that drained our department's resources. But that day at St. Catherine's, when the Department of Public Health streamed it all live. Every lie, and every lie, and every time. Betrayal laid bare. I finally saw the wheels come off his carefully built facade. The immediate consequences arrived in layers. David was suspended without pay, a move the hospital's legal counsel fast-tracked after Dr. Sar. Maya Chen's regulatory team arrived with official notices and subpoenas. His access card deactivated. His name scrubbed from the internal email directory. What I didn't anticipate was the deep ripple beyond just him. Lauren Price, whose role in the donor relations office suddenly felt more like a puppet master than a colleague, was removed from all foundation duties by board emergency vote. Even Richard Price, his father and our board chair, was forced to recuse himself entirely from any oversight of the foundation to avoid conflicts of interest. That same morning, a patient safety review committee was convened, an independent investigation ordered to scrutinize every protocol David had touched. I stood at the edge of it all. No celebrations, no heightened glee in victory. Just a heavy weight settling differently on my shoulders. I called Dr. Chen shortly after watching the board's public statement. Her voice was calm but resolute. "This won't be quick or easy. This won't be quick or easy," she reminded me, "but you did the right thing bringing this forward. These investigations, they take months sometimes. Criminal, civil, professional licensing. You'll need patience." I nodded, although she couldn't see me. I packed up my desk slowly, knowing my work was only beginning. Still, I had to answer the last message David sent that afternoon. It was brief, stripped of his usual arrogance. "Emma, I'm sorry. Please reconsider the affidavit withdrawal. This drags us both through public hell." I stared at the screen for a long minute. then typed back a single line. Tag 867394 remains evidence. My decision does not depend on your remorse. That metal tag, the one found tucked inside a linen bag from the operating suite, had become worse than a symbol. It was the first piece of evidence that exploded David's carefully narrated facade. That small, cold object tied the fabricated records to the reality of his negligence. The weeks that followed blurred in my memory. The hospital put patient safety at the forefront, implementing immediate protective measures. Every surgical linen batch was tracked with double scans. Our suppliers were audited. I worked closely with compliance teams, drafting protocols to close every loophole David had exploited. 6 months later, 6 months later, standing in the hospital's auditoriums during my advanced certification ceremony for patient safety and infection prevention, the silence felt different. This was not just a professional milestone, it was a reclamation of control over my life and work. I was named Director of Compliance and Infection Prevention shortly after, an unexpected but welcomed vote of confidence by hospital leadership. One of my first initiatives was the creation of a transparent linen chain protocol. Every medical textile was now logged and tracked with RFID tags, an open ledger accessible to regulators and hospital staff alike. No more secrets, no more backdoors for cutting corners or hiding evidence. The program was painstaking to build, requiring cooperation at all levels, but I wouldn't settle for anything less. In my new office, I kept that original metal tag in a small, sealed glass case on the shelf beside a crisp white hospital sheet folded flat and unblemished. It reminded me daily where we had been and how far I'd come. The tag had no glamour. It was cold metal. It was cold metal, aged and marked with a serial number that once sealed safety's breach. Now protected behind glass, it symbolized something else. Truth preserved, wrongs confronting reckoning. I often catch myself tracing that number with my finger in quiet moments. Helping is a choice, not a debt. You don't need their permission to be worth something. The strongest revenge is refusing to become what they did to you. That tag still speaks, reminding me that safety, diligence, and transparency are how we move forward. Not just at St. Catherine's, but wherever trust must be rebuilt. What would you have done when the company you devoted your life to turned its back on you? Tell me in the comments. This story is a fictionalized account, inspired by real-world themes of workplace betrayal and institutional accountability.